Hey, what's up, guys? So I just finished taking the General Assembly 12-week part-time user experience design class, and I thought I'd share my experience, especially since quite a few friends asked me. I guess they're kind of on the fence too. They saw the same class, and they were curious. So a little bit of background about me. I have been doing web design for the past, it must have been about 15 years already, and somewhere along the line, web design started taking different branches. There's now like designer, developer, and then designers further divided into like user experience design, user interface design, right? So for the past 3 or 4 years, I have been calling myself UX/UI designer. Since that seems to be the cool thing to do. So back then, web design is kind of like all-encompassing, meaning that when I have a project coming in, I still need to do user research, I need to do wireframing, and I got to do like low-fidelity markup, high-fidelity markup, and then I may slice it up into HTML, CSS, and then I'll pass it off to developer to do all the heavy lifting because they're the smart guys. So now that UX is more and more important, I feel like it should be time for me to fill in any gap of knowledge that I have. And in my research, I came across General Assembly's user experience class. Now, I remember one of my coworker, she took the General Assembly front-end development class, and she spoke really highly of the program. So I thought, okay, let's give it a try. So I looked it up. It was $4,000. It was a lot of money. And this is when I approached my manager at work, who is awesome, by the way. And he was able to pull some strings and got work to pay for it because, I mean, it is applicable to my job. So a little bit about the program. It's a 12-week program, and each week the class meet twice, and each class is from 6:30 to 8:30, so it's 2 hours. Sometimes there's a short break, like 5 minutes break in between. Sometimes there isn't. Usually it's just like straight through. But it does not feel long at all because it's so packed with information. Now, in comparison, there is like a crash course from GA as well, and also like a full-time user experience course that costs, if I remember right, is about $10,000 because one of my friends actually took it, and I actually met him in class. I'm like, hey, you're taking this too? And I'll share a little bit of difference between the two. But since I did a part-time UX course, I want to tell you a little bit about my experience. So my background is that I do a little bit of UX and a lot of UI, a lot of visual design heavily. But UX, I know the basics, especially since I actually took a 2-day course by Numa. That was actually called Human-Centered Design. So they actually give out cards with different techniques to run different like whether brainstorming sessions or like client research sessions. So it's a little bit more technical versus like this GA course that I took is a little bit more high level. It kind of tells you that, okay, this is kind of like the information you want to get out of it. And they kind of touch on like these are certain techniques that you can use, but they don't really like they're not really too technique heavy. They say that, okay, this is like the best way to approach this. This is the best practice when talking to people without influencing them, etc. So I think there's pros and cons in both methods. I kind of wish that GA will kind of give us a little bit more techniques as well, but at a high level it's great. It's kind of like an analogy could be like GA is teaching us how to think logically in terms of programming versus when I was taking the human-centered design course, it's more like they teach me specific languages, to accomplish what I want to do. So either way is fine. So I wouldn't say this is a con for GA. It's interesting because like the way they tell us is like, okay, this is a concept, this is why you want to do this, and I appreciate it too. So for this part-time UX course, they took us from the very beginning. Basically, like you determine the problem, and then you kind of do some research, user research, like what kind of, this problem impact what kind of users, and you build like personas, and then you build your hypothesis, like this is the solution to this problem, and then you do a lot of different research to kind of like keep confirming, okay, this is a proper solution. There's nothing worse than building something that is nobody's going to use. It's like the wrong solution, and I think this is so important. I actually had some startup fail because we didn't do, I guess, like enough user research. So this struck really close to home. Now at GA, we had three instructor. I guess I can share the name here, right? Phil, Marcus, and Kat. There was actually Natalie was part of it too, but she had to leave halfway due to a job. But they were fantastic. They know their stuff. They're really experienced, and what's more important is that they're very quick. You can tell somebody is a great designer and a great communicator based on how quickly can they think on their feet. Like, for example, the way they explain certain things, certain usability, UX terms, and just like process is really, really clear. However, that's easy, right? It could be canned material. You can just prepare that before class. But when certain classmates or when I have some issues that I just ask them, they can very quickly give you a couple solutions and even a couple different other products that may have come to the same solution for your references as well. And I think that's huge. That shows that they're really experienced. So coming in, I'm a little bit experienced already in terms of like user experience, but I have little gaps along the way. And I think this course, by taking you through from the beginning process to the end of the process of the project, it filled in all these little gaps nicely. Now, sometimes people ask me, okay, so I mean, would you recommend me taking this? Well, that depends, like all things, right? I think if you are already in the web design field, or you're in that environment, maybe you're a project manager, you have heard of these terms before, you have team members that use these skills already, I think it's totally great. I mean, it'll be a fantastic way to kind of get you more familiar with these process. And if you already use some of these process, great. Now you learn a little bit more, like what comes before and what comes after, or like what is the proper lingo to use this. And that's really important too, actually. If you want to convince your clients, or if you need to convince some of the other your teammates to do certain things, it will be more convincing if there's actually some kind of scientific backing or some kind of research with this. So if you can cite like your UX class, or you can cite that, okay, this other company, like this big company, used this kind of method too, you'll be much more convincing. Now, if you are brand new to user experience design, you have never done any like design work or like this kind of big project where you need different steps before, I would be hesitant to call myself a UX designer coming out of this part-time course. Because what happens is that in this class, you bring one project in from beginning to finish in this 12-week period. This also means that by the time you come out of this class, you have only worked on one project. So that's not a lot of experience. So for me personally, I would be a little bit hesitant to call myself a full-fledged UX designer just from taking this part-time course. Now, remember that I mentioned that I have a friend that took the full-time course. So from what he told me is that it's also about 3 months, except it's full-time. So you're there for like 40 hours a week or something. And then by the time you finish the class there, you have worked on at least 5 projects. And this includes one with a live client, meaning that you actually go out to a company that have a real problem and you provide them with like a real solution. And just from talking to him, it sounds like it's really empowering and he seems super confident. And thinking about it, just from my experience in this part-time GA UX course, I did one project for 12 weeks, and coming out I already feel like, oh, okay, I kind of know my stuff already. I just want more experience. So I feel that times that by 5, right? Now you have 5 projects, and I think if I am like a completely brand new designer coming into UX, that's a huge difference from doing that part-time for one project versus doing it full-time for 5 different projects. Yeah, so my take is that, well, first of all, if your work is willing to pay for you to do this part-time course, definitely take them up on it. It's great. But if you have to pay it out of pocket for $4,000, I think it's a little bit steep. If you have to pay for it yourself, to be honest, I'll probably turn to like online resources or do like those weekend courses first to see if that helps. And then just kiss some ass at work so they'll pay for you. However, if your work is not willing to pay for you and you want to do the UX class, meaning that you're probably thinking about getting a new job anyways, I think I would actually recommend you taking the full-time course. Just suck it up, drop 10K, go for the entire course, and I bet you'll feel super comfortable calling yourself a UX designer at that point. Even though it probably still is entry level, but at least you know your stuff well enough. You've went for a couple projects versus just one. So that's, I think that's my recommendation. Like if my friend approached me and they're already kind of like in design, they know some of these UX stuff already, and their work is willing to pay for them, I would highly recommend this user experience design course at General Assembly for part-time. If their work is not willing to pay for it, I would kind of recommend them to turn to like the free resources online or try their weekend course first, like just like 2-day crash course. I mean, I learn a lot of techniques there as well, and see if they find like enough interest to kind of jump ship to do it full time. And like I mentioned before, if you're trying to change career anyways, and your work is not willing to pay for your part-time course, I would say just kind of go cold turkey, quit your job, big step, drop the 10K, and then just take the full-time user experience course at General Assembly. Or even look into like one of those universities. They have like a full semester worth of like user experience courses, which I feel like is a little bit of overkill. Because like just from the curriculum, I think like the full-time course at General Assembly covers enough for you to able to go out and say, hey, I'm like a UX designer, right? So that's pretty much it for my personal experience with General Assembly's user experience design part-time course. Again, I had a great time there, really great team there. The community is amazing, by the way. I didn't really touch on it too much. Besides the instructor, all the classmates there were like super engaging, super social, but I guess you kind of need that personality to be in a UX designer, right? I mean, like you have to engage, you have to talk to people, to do research. General Assembly also has a great support program. Like they were giving out all kind of information saying that alumni, you have this website you can go on to set up time with like other alumni who may have been there, done that, and now is successful. You can block off time and have meeting with them. They have different programs like they will kind of match you up with potential startups, some upstairs 7076 that may need a UX or visual designer. And of course, the entire community is just really supportive. They're saying that like if you have questions, feel free to just drop by, ask questions, which I think is so great. They're also huge on survey. Almost after like every single class, they will send out a survey to see like how they can improve, and then they actually address those issues that classmates mention in survey. So it's not just for show; they actually do something about it, which I think is so important as well. And they actually show like what they actually practice what they preach, like user experience, right? You have to keep like adjusting based on what you find. But yeah, I mean, I think General Assembly is it's a great organization. I know like the stereotype in the past is that, oh, they crank out like maybe not as qualified individual, because it's almost like, okay, you get this group of people come in for a couple of days and they come out claiming that they're like pros already. So that part I can't really comment on, but because as a whole, there's so many people there. But in my class, from what I see presented during the final presentation and what kind of process they went through and the thought process, I think, no, these are great UX designer coming out of this class, although a lot of them do have some kind of design background. But if I were to hire a UX designer, I would have no problem hiring from all the people from this class. They come out super confident. They come out with the presentation that are professional. They know what they're talking about. They're convincing. And then all the research makes sense. All the wireframe makes sense. And that's so important. So I highly recommend General Assembly part-time course. In terms of which course, part-time, full-time, or whatever, that is really up to your situation. But overall, yeah, 2 thumbs up. You can't see my feet, but my thumbs are going up too on my feet. All right. So if you have any specific question, feel free to ask me. I will try to be as objective as possible. If you see my other review, you know that if something sucks, I'll tell you it sucked. But this class, I like it. And once again, thank you for my boss at work for letting me have this great experience. I feel like I really grew a lot as a designer, and I feel a lot more confident in terms of like approaching UX and pitching UX stuff. All right, well, talk to you guys later. Thumb is still up.